This is sample T, and we're going to work through identifying what exactly sample T is. When we take sample T and we subject it to the unsaturation test using bromine water, the orange colour remains. This means we don't have a reaction, so we don't have multiple carbon-carbon bonds, meaning we don't have an alkene or alkyne functional group. When we do the oxidation test, the orange colour remains. And this means that there's no oxidation in our molecule, so we probably don't have a primary or secondary alcohol or an aldehyde functional group. And when we try the carboxylic acid test, we don't see any bubbles, which means there are no carboxylic acid functional groups. The next thing I look at is always the IR. From 1500 downwards is the fingerprint region, and I don't worry about that. But from 1500 upwards is where we see interesting functional groups or signals for different functional groups. So the first strong signal I hit is at about 1700, and this is indicative of a carbonyl group. So we know that there is no aldehyde functional group in our molecule because the oxidation test produced a negative result, which means we're either dealing with a ketone or an ester or an amide that gives rise to this functional group. If I continue moving down, we end up with this strong signal here, which is for our carbon-hydrogen stretching. And at this stage, this signal up here isn't really important. It's not very strong. It's not really indicative of a lot. So keep it in mind that it is here, but at this stage, we can't make any definite judgments about it, except to say that there's no alcohol on our molecule. So remember, we could have a carbonyl group as a ketone and an alcohol, OH group on separate carbons, not as a carboxylic acid. That's always an option as well. So at this stage, my main takeaway is that I have a carbonyl group. The next thing I want to look at is the carbon NMR to determine how many carbons I have in my molecule. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 carbons, and we're going to remember that when we look at the mass spectrum. And how many hydrogens do I have? I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hydrogens. So looking at our mass spec, we go to the very end of our mass spectrum and have a look at what our mass peak is, our molecular ion peak. And here it's 86. So again, these smaller ones beside it are probably carbon-13 satellites. So taking this 86 and the fact that we had 5 carbons and 10 hydrogens and definitely 1 oxygen, we can start to work out what our molecular formula is. A final double check I do before finalizing the molecular formula is, do I have 2 signals, 2 big signals down our molecular ion peak end? If the signals are 1-to-1 in ratio, it could be indicative of a bromine atom. If they're in a 3-to-1 ratio, it could be indicative of a chlorine atom, but I have neither, so I definitely don't have any halogens in my molecule. So 5 carbons, 10 hydrogens and 1 oxygen gives 86, which means this is my molecular formula. Given that I don't have a second oxygen, we're probably dealing with a ketone, not an ester. And given that we only have 1 oxygen and no nitrogens, we don't have an amide. Let's come back to our carbon NMR because it's always nice to just check this out for certain signals. These signals down here don't really draw my attention. They're all in sort of the same area, probably all corresponding more or less to alkene carbons. It's this signal up here that's interesting. So it's about 210. And this is indicative of a carbonyl carbon, that's either a ketone or aldehyde functional group. Now we know we don't have an aldehyde because we did our oxidation test, which means we're dealing with a ketone functional group in our molecule. Now remember, the ketone can't be on our terminal carbons, but it can be on our internal carbons. So what do I mean by that? If we know we have 5 carbons, let's draw them in to start off with. So our terminal carbons are these two at the end, or the terminus of our molecule. Because we have a ketone, and we only have a ketone, we know that these two carbons are going to be CH3 groups. I can look at my spectrum, and the first place I always look is below 1, because that's where we see almost always a signal that looks like this, a triplet that integrates for 3 hydrogen. And this is indicative of, or represents, usually, a methyl group, so a CH3 group, that sits next to a CH2 group. So we can go ahead and pop this in on our molecule. And if we really want to, we can call this signal 1, and we can assign it to this proton environment here. Next, we pop down to our next signal. It is for 2 protons, so probably a CH2 group. And the integration is the splitting pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can come back to which peak that might correspond to later. But let's just write down for our own notes that it's a sextet. Moving on to our next signal, it integrates for 3 protons, so it's a CH3 group, but it's a singlet, so it's next to a carbon that has no hydrogens attached. We know that it's going to be this CH3 group here, and now we know where we need to put our ketone functional group so that we end up with this singlet splitting pattern, which means that this group here will be a methyl group and will be our final signal. We know it's going to 4 is going to correspond to this methyl group here because it's been shifted downfield, which means it's sitting next to a carbon that has a more electronegative element attached to it, which is de-shielding these protons. Just to double check that the splitting pattern is right, we have a triplet, which means it's next to 2 other protons, which is this case, which means that our second signal here corresponds to these 2 protons here. As a sextet, it needs to be next to 5 other protons, and it is. So we can confirm that this is signal number 2. The final thing we need to do is name our molecule. So we have got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon chain. So we're dealing with some kind of pentanone. And we always put this carbonyl group, if it's the only functional group in there, as high in the chain numbering as possible. So it would be pentan 2-one. And this is our final molecule. Now, how do we know that this ketone isn't right in the middle of our molecule? How would the NMR spectrum change if it were here? And this is just another check you can do to confirm that you have assigned your spectrum properly and drawn the right final molecule. For example, here I have 3-pentanone, so where it is sitting in the middle. And if we look at this molecule closely, we can see that it has a line of symmetry. And so what we would expect is 2 signals. We would expect a quartet here and a triplet here, and we wouldn't see these 2 signals. So we have our CH3 group and our CH2 group, and this would be replicated on the other side. So this would integrate for 6 protons, this would integrate for 4 protons. If we look at another isomer of pentan 2-one, 3-methyl-2-butanone, again, we would expect to see something different. So we would expect to see this CH3 group sitting somewhere over here. Then this carbon here has only one proton attached, and it's next to two CH3 groups, which are the same. So we would expect this signal here to be a sextet. Oops, that's not right. That was going to, oh no, yeah, septet, sorry. I was drawing the right thing, said the wrong thing. So we'd expect this to be a septet. Integrate for 1. And then these two CH3 groups here are the same. And we would expect them sitting maybe somewhere around here. And they are connected to one proton, so we would expect to see a doublet which integrates to 6. So you can see how these two compounds with the same molecular formula but different attachments, we could call them structural isomers, will give different NMR spectra, which helps you determine if you don't have the right molecule, if you've identified the right molecule or not. I really like thinking about different structural isomers from the same molecular formula to confirm that you have identified the right molecule whenever you're in a situation where this might be aligned to grades. What we use it for personally is to double check that we haven't made the wrong molecule in the lab. So it's really good to think about other molecules that could be similar and think about their NMR structures and then discount them based on the NMR spectrum that you actually do have. I hope you find that kind of approach helpful for validating that you do have the right molecule.